Hey, welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into something pretty wild. A single late-night conversation that started out all philosophical and then just spiraled into this really raw personal fight. And it all hinges on one massive question we're all grappling with these days. What does it actually mean to be authentic?
And this quote right here from the poet W.B. Yeats, it's like the key that unlocks this whole thing. The best lack all conviction, while the worst are full of passionate intensity. It just perfectly captures that tension, right? Between, quiet compromise and that loud, unbending belief.
So yeah, let's treat this exactly like a case study. We're about to watch this huge human dilemma play out in real time, all through the words and choices of three very, very different people.
All right, so our story kicks off in an online chat. Picture this. You've got three people. There's Jason, a writer who's deep into researching conspiracies and the occult. Then there's Steve, a retired nurse. And finally, Chris, who's kind of this philosophical observer, basically caught right in the middle of it all.
And what's so wild is where this whole thing started. It wasn't about politics, it wasn't about conspiracies. It was about voices. Seriously, they were analyzing public figures, people like the philosopher Alan Watts and Jordan Peterson, and they were trying to figure out what it is that makes a voice sound, well, genuine, authentic.
So before everything went south, they were actually on the same page. They were all on this shared quest looking for that kind of magical quality, that raw honesty where a person's voice is like a direct line to who they really are, a search for pure, unfiltered truth. But, as you can guess, that harmony, it was about to get completely shattered.
And this is it. This is the turning point. The conversation suddenly shifts right from these big abstract ideas about authenticity to a single, concrete, real-life decision that puts everything to the test. This is where a line gets drawn, deep in the sand. So what lit the fuse? It was one decision made by Steve. As a retired nurse, he's looking for work in this new post-pandemic world. And to get a job, he chose to get vaccinated, even though he had his own personal doubts. And that one action, man, that became the fault line for everything that came next. And Steve's reason for it? It was brutally honest. He just came right out and said it. I'm a slave to my own wages. He saw it as a totally pragmatic choice, a move he had to make to pay the rent. He knew he was working inside a system he didn't control. And sometimes, survival means you have to play by the rules. And boom, that one decision just ripped the curtain back on two completely opposing, totally irreconcilable ways of looking at the world. Suddenly, it wasn't about voices anymore. It was about how you live an authentic life in a world that's full of systems you might actually hate.
Okay, so the main disagreement really boils down to this. On one side, you have Jason's view. For him, real authenticity means you have to radically detach. You have to reject corrupt systems, period. Even if it costs you everything. But on the other side, you've got Steve. He believes you find authenticity by engaging, by working within those same flawed systems and trying to bring love and compassion to whatever you do.
And this really gets to the absolute heart of their conflict. For Jason, the system isn't just flawed. It's this malevolent force. It's evil. It takes good things like love and twists them for control. So for him, it must be fought. Steve, on the other hand, sees it more as a compromised, messy reality. And the only real choice you have is to get in there and try to make a positive difference from the inside.
And you have to understand, for Jason, the stakes are just cosmically high. This quote from him says it all. Social interaction is spiritual warfare. Wow. So in his mind, every single conversation, every little interaction, it's a battle for your soul. There's no middle ground. There's no neutral territory. So when you have two people with starting points that are that far apart, a simple disagreement just isn't possible, right? The conversation didn't just get heated, it completely broke down. It was like they were speaking two totally different languages.
And the attacks became deeply, deeply personal. Jason didn't just disagree with Steve's choice, he went for the jugular. He attacked Steve's character, flat out accusing him of being in denial and lying to himself. The debate was over, the gloves were off.
Jason's core accusation was basically this. By making that one pragmatic choice, Steve had become an agent for the very system he claimed to hate. In Jason's worldview, Steve wasn't fighting it anymore. He was helping it. He was part of the problem.
And to hammer his point home, Jason started using terms like NPC, that's non-player character from video games. It's slang for someone who isn't really thinking for themselves. They're just a puppet, a parrot, reciting lines that the system feeds them. I mean, it's about as deep an insult as you can get, suggesting you have zero free will.
So from Steve's side of things, he felt like he wasn't being debated. He was being dehumanized. He was just trying to explain his choice, and in return, he felt like he was being labeled as everything from a mindless puppet of capitalism to, well, to an actual demon.
Okay, so let's take a step back for a second. This is more than just some niche fight on the internet, right? What this argument really does is it shines a spotlight on a huge dilemma that honestly every single one of us has to deal with in the world today. Because when you really dig into it, this whole blow-up exposes a fundamental tension that exists in all of our lives. It's a clash between two really powerful and often opposite human needs that we all struggle to balance.
And here it is, the central conflict laid bare. On one hand, there's this powerful drive for ideological purity, staying true to your principles, no matter what it costs you. And on the other hand, you have the cold, hard demands of pragmatic reality, making compromises just to survive, and maybe, hopefully, do a little bit of good in a really flawed world.
So what this whole case study does is it forces a really tough question on all of us. Where do you draw the line between a necessary compromise and being complicit? At what point does a practical choice become a moral failure?
Ultimately, this whole thing leaves us with that one, single, unavoidable question. In a world that is inherently compromised, where do you draw your line? There are no easy answers here. Thanks for joining us on The Explainer.